Leadership Story Talks, where we discuss the practices that engage, motivate, develop, retain, and attract people to businesses. We'll give you principles and tools based on real-world stories to leverage listening and storytelling to become a better leader and management professional. Leadership Story Talks is produced by Narrative, a company that focuses on personal storytelling for business.
All right, well, welcome to Leadership Story Talks. I'm Jerome Deroy, CEO of Narrative.
I'm Julienne Ryan, and it's good to be here with you.
It's great to be here as well. And this is a special episode. We don't normally, this was not scheduled. And we decided to have this because it's been, today's November 11. And of course, on November 6, we got some news. And so we thought it would be worth having a reflection on the time that we're in and maybe offer some practical advice on how to handle certain conversations and how to connect with others in a time like this one. So want to hand it over to you, Julienne, because you had a thought that I thought would be worth sharing with our audience.
When we were talking about chatting with all of you, I was thinking about how in the act of storytelling, when we teach people how to use their personal stories in their work and their lives to build connections and understanding, we live in our own universes and we have certain assumptions we hold about what life should be or could be or was for us. And whenever we go through a significant milestone event like in a major election, it really causes us to take a step back and challenge us. But an election is not all about just one person, it's all the people involved, it's everybody. So it makes us really question and think, about all our relationships and what's going to happen going forward. So I know that many colleagues have been much more quieter this week and reflecting and taking times off and wondering what's next and how all these changes are going to impact their work and how they work and what they're thinking about in their relationships with friends and families, etc. So that's something I've been musing about, and that's why I reached out to you.
Yeah, and I think in our position of we're very privileged in the sense that our work is to listen to stories and to elicit stories from people. And so certainly speaking for myself, I get to hear a lot of different kinds of stories that represent different kinds of visions of the world. And inevitably, when I come out of these sessions with clients, I am much more struck by what we have in common than what makes us different or, a difference of opinions. Interestingly, in all the stories that I hear, there are no opinions. There are no judgments, actually. That's what we train people to do. We train them to tell stories without judgments, without opinions, without interpretations, and just stick to what happened in their experience and let the audience make the interpretation. And I feel like that's such a helpful tool right now because many people don't feel like they have the right words, or they're actually maybe even hesitant. And some are probably downright scared to exercise their voices at this moment because they're just not sure how it's going to be received. And I think I'm here to tell everyone that you can feel really confident in the fact that your story is valuable and that you can tell it in such a way that doesn't create such, a divergent response in terms of, or an aggressive response from your audience. And of course, that takes work, that takes practice, and that takes trust. And so, I would, at this time when people ask me, what should we do? I'm sort of thinking, well, first of all, just listen to yourself, listen to other people in your life, and then try to connect with someone. Even if it's your neighbor or your best friend or someone in your family, someone you trust, connect, have a conversation, share your feelings with each other, whatever you need to do. But really, I think most of all is try not to isolate too much and sort of, I'm just going to watch, my favorite shows for a couple of days, which, you can do that. But don't do it for too long because I was just reading something recently about loneliness, and we're really in a crisis of loneliness in this country and worldwide, and how they've directly correlated linked loneliness to social media, online dating, and binge watching our favorite shows on demand. And so I think at this moment, it's really try to connect with a human being, try to connect in person, go to your favorite coffee shop and have a conversation with someone that you trust and love, because that's really what lifts us up. We can't really do much about the outcome of an election. That's for most of us out of our hands now. And it's about what can we do in our communities and who can we connect with. So starting with yourself, try to really pay attention to what it is that you're feeling, what it is that you're going through, and try to share that with someone else if you can, and go from there. And then something will appear, something will emerge. Take your time with it. That's my message at the moment.
Small things, because I've been through a couple of author events in the last few weeks, and most recently Saturday, where I was in downtown Jamaica, Queens, at an author event, and I had the pleasure of listening to a few women authors get up and talk about what informed their work in education and writing the book, whether it was for other women or children. And they dovetail what you were just saying now is, before we can be in a place to listen to others, we also have to learn how to love and listen to ourselves and appreciate and respect our experiences, whether we can change what's in the past or not. But that's the first step
Mm.
to listening. So I thought there was serendipity that I was hearing that, and also meeting people where they are, and giving them a space to express a dream and hope. So I had another experience like that with one of the participants at the writers section there, or the writers presentation. You had mentioned something about connecting, and it, just as luck would have it, a few weeks ago I got to be in a room with the author who worked with Dr. Ruth Westheimer before she passed. And Dr. Ruth Westheimer had wrote The Joy of Connections. So very late in her career, she was invited to be the ambassador of connection and peace people in New York State. And I've started to read the book, and it's a lot of simple wisdom and very practical in her voice, of somebody who had endured and experienced so much in her life,
Mm.
of trauma and loss and learning and having to reinvent herself and immigrate multiple times. That whole thing about loneliness, and how we can have some control over it with the act of listening and making small practical efforts. So I encourage everybody to get this book or read it or share it with somebody, and maybe make that something communal activity you can do with folks that you might have some trepidation talking to over the next few weeks as we go into holiday dinners. I think we have to have alchemy of what ingredients we bring. So I think one of the things she mentioned, and I always believe, we always think conversations are ready made. If we skew to the introverted side, sometimes our energy comes out of the after, when we can huddle in our own rooms and just revive. But come with things that you can use as a starting point,
Mm.
recipes, maybe childhood memories that were positive, or hobbies. So finding a common ground that can lay the foundation to share and get some of those good hormones working for us. And then a lot of conversations shouldn't always be at the big group with a lot of ears around it. Find private moments, or make that dinner the starting point, and maybe after the fact, on another day in another situation, picking up the phone or going in person to sit with that person to kind of do some healing and listening
Mm.
and sharing.
Mm.
And most importantly, contracting what the listen is going to look like. That we're going to do our level best not to interrupt. Sometimes that's the hardest thing, whether we love what that person's saying or not, but to contract to pause, be still, and listen.
Mm.
Um, and it's a lot of, it takes a lot of little steps, but it can work. And it's
Mhm.
not something, it's instant. And that's what I love about what she had said also. We think, okay, I've conquered this day. This is great. But guess what? Tomorrow's a new day, new conversations, and we have to relearn it the next time we talk to those people that we've been a little bit nervous about speaking with, or
Mm.
maybe disappointed.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I don't have much to add to that. I think that's great. You've covered a lot of ground, and just the title itself, The Joy of Connections, I think that kind of sums it up nicely. Is that, when you go into that conversation with a family member that you're maybe dreading, or you're wondering what's going to happen, just remember that there is joy in connecting, and if we look for that, maybe that changes our mindset a little bit. Maybe we go into things a little bit more positively, and we yeah, that turns on the optimist in us when things maybe don't feel that way. But yeah, let's trust that we're all human beings and we can all connect with each other. That's what we're made for, is to connect with one another. So let's trust that. And the only thing I'll just add to what you were saying around listening and being still is also remember to breathe. I was just working with a group of people last week, and they were getting ready to do a presentation, and a few people asked, I'm afraid I'm going to be too emotional. I'm afraid I'm going to be this or that. I'm nervous. I'm anxious. And the one thing that came back as the most effective tool to approach that situation, and situations where you're not sure what's going to happen and you have anxiety around it, is just to remember to breathe. Because very often what happens is that we just kind of we stop, and we just sort of brace ourselves for what's going to happen next. My fists are clenched if you can't see me, and I stopped kind of breathing here. But just, let all that go, breathe, feel your feet on the ground, notice that you are a body in space, and just take a breath. Take a breath as you hear something that perhaps you didn't want to hear that day. You take a breath, and then you say what you have to say, right? And that's connection. That's the work that it takes, right? And I think that's
And
what we need at the moment.
and building on that, sometimes we think communications is perfect, curated words, the excellent phrase, but just speaking from the heart and just taking the time to think about what you're going to
Mm.
say and pause and know you can pick it up again. And you were talking about breathing. I think I've shared this with you before, but counting. Um,
Mm.
Sometimes I talk too fast when I get excited or I'm trying to get a point in, but to count. And I used to do this a lot in HR when I was working, where I would count with my fingers and press them on the desk. So I would listen. So I would do almost like piano, one, two,
Mm.
and it would slow me down. And also it distract me if I found in a certain situation getting emotional, whether it was teary or thing, to count, to count. So you're tripping up your brain, and I'm sure there's a neural psychological theory out there that somebody's going to ping me and share with me afterwards, but it worked. I was trying to figure out how to trick myself to stay composed and listen and breathe, and then later on, nothing wrong with having a good cry if you've had a tough day and you feel like people let it out. Don't. And a lot of our stress illnesses is because we keep everything really contained, but
Mhm.
pick each moment what works for you.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, great. Anything else you want to add?
There's always
Thoughts?
something.
Okay.
Tomorrow's another day. We'll have
Next
more
time.
chats.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much, and thanks, Julian, for just for bringing this up last week, and saying, hey, we should. How about we have a special recording outside of the usual once a week recording that we do. And so, yeah, I really appreciate you for bringing that up, and for us having this
Yeah.
conversation right now. I feel better because of it. That's the power of connection, I think, between us. That one can say, hey, how about we have a conversation about this and reflect, and maybe that'll be helpful to others. I find it helpful for me. So thank you.
Good. We're not alone, and we all sharing a lot of similar emotions. I think that's the part, the joy of this. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of that, if you feel like you wanna explore some of these ideas around listening, around storytelling, around being able to kind of take that breath and think, and think about what you're going to say and prepare what you're going to say, If you've got something coming up where you're not quite sure how to approach it, that's what we do at Narrative. And we're always happy to listen to you. And yeah, Julienne.
And just building on that, we say about storytelling, but one of the things about having a coach or like us and people who specialize in this is we help you navigate the conversations. And there's a rhythm and a process. So some of the burden is lifted from you because we can be that neutral party and pay attention and figure out what dynamics can work. So you can come out of those experiences where everyone can feel respected and safe and acknowledged, and having constructive tools and things they can do, not just in that room, but going forward. So it is that extra relative at the dinner table. I keep saying when you bring a stranger to dinner and your relatives, they listen better and everyone's on their better behavior. That's kind of like us. So we help navigate those dynamics.
Yeah, yeah. And so if you're interested in exploring that for yourself, for your team, whatever the case may be, we've got lots of different options. You can go to narrative.com, NARATIV.com, and shoot us an email. There's a contact form there, especially for that. So don't hesitate. We're always happy to listen. And again, if you want to find out more about this podcast and find out more episodes and more blog posts, etc., more resources to navigate these times, go to narrative.com, NARATIV.com. Everything is on there. And in the meantime, we will see you next time, talk to you next time, listen to you next time, and really looking forward to it. Thanks, Julienne, as always, for being my co-host. All right, bye, everybody.
For more information on the narrative listening and storytelling method and how it can help your business, go to narrative.com.